Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to take this little tissue box and turn it into this using a little bit of decoupage and some embellishments. Let's get started. As you can see, I've already got a little bit of a head start using some gesso, and this is heavy white gesso, and I did give it 2 layers. As you can tell, you can still faintly see the colors even through 2 layers of heavy gesso. I'm just finishing ripping up some of my tissue, and now I'm going to use the clear gesso to adhere my tissue. I chose clear gesso because I wasn't sure what I was going to be doing. On top, I thought if I used watercolor or any other kind of pigment, then I wanted to prepare my surface and have it ready to accept that type of coloring. I didn't end up doing that, but at the time I didn't know what I was going to do. So I was trying to be prepared for whatever may come. I do skip ahead a little bit, just wanting to show you a little bit of how I laid out the papers. It didn't matter really if they were upside down or not. That might matter to you, so of course you would do yours however you like. But when all is said and done, the writing is kind of small for this print, so I didn't think it would be that big of a difference. Getting the inside was a little bit difficult. I actually did sand the inside of the where the tissues go because it had such a jagged edge. I sanded that a little bit, and I do think that helped, but it was not perfectly smooth, I can tell you that. Here I'm finishing up the back and just really trying to go over the piece with the gesso and making sure all of my little corners and edges have been glued down. Now that the box is covered, I wanted to add another layer, and so I pulled out my coffee dyed pieces and found this little doily, and I thought that would look real cute. In case you haven't noticed, I am going for a vintage look, and I thought the coffee dyed doily would be a perfect fit. As you can see in the back, it looks like there's a little bit of a bubble towards the top, and I'm working right now to get down all those little bitty edges, but I did see that bubble, and of course, you know, there's nothing better than using your finger. And by doing that, I was able to smooth out that bubble, and you know, using your finger can be really helpful for that, but you do have to be careful if you're doing it with tissue paper, because sometimes it's easy to use too much pressure when you're using your finger, and you can rip the tissue paper because it is so delicate. The doilies, I didn't have that issue because the paper is much thicker, so I didn't really have to worry so much about ripping it. As you can see, here go the fingers again. Sometimes it's just the best tool, isn't it? I made sure it was dried all over, and now it's time to add some color. And as you can see, I chose to use a distress ink instead of watercolor or paints or some other form of pigment. Since I was doing a vintage piece, of course I chose to use vintage photo. I really wanted to bring out the edges of the doily and all of the little holes, so that's why I went over it with the distressed ink. And there we go, the box is properly inked. Now, to add the embellishments. You guys, it took me forever to figure out how I wanted to decorate my box. I thought about leaving it just as it was, because it was cute. But I kept looking at it and I thought, no, it needs a little bit of something on it. And so I finally found these flowers. I guess they're a little bit wintry. They're kind of burlap and kind of heavy, but the colors were right and I thought it was really cute, so I went with it. And as you can see, I'm just using hot glue for these, and that should be fine. And again, at this point, I considered leaving it as it was, but it still felt unfinished. So I found these little wooden pieces and they were just begging to be used. So I grabbed them, and I found a couple of pieces that went along with my vintage look, but I did want to add a little bit of color to them. They would have been fine just keeping them as they were, but I wanted to play around with them just a little bit and add some color. As you saw a moment ago, I'm using dark brown and yellow ochre and mixing those together just to get a base. And from there I'll go in and just kind of play around with the color. I did leave all of the coloring in case people wanted to see, but if you would rather skip ahead, this part lasts about a minute. Now it's time to glue on the pieces. My little lamp post was a little bit too high, and so I just broke off the bottom and it fit perfectly. Now that I know where things should go, it's time to glue it down. As you can see, I did use hot glue, which was a little tricky because these pieces were quite small, but it worked out just fine. I didn't even burn myself, so I was pleased. Now for the other side, I took a moment to figure out how I wanted it to look, and then I glued them down. When you use hot glue and you get those little webs that seem to be everywhere, using a heat tool is the best way to make them disappear. Now when I looked at the piece, I decided that my little wooden pieces were just too dark and I wanted to lighten them up a little bit. There are still some dark places. I didn't make everything light, but as you can see, I did hit some highlights just to kind of give it a little more interest and lighten it up a bit. Before adding in the tissue, I wanted to give you a nice close-up look at the finished product. Okay, now to add the tissue, I really just grabbed a handful of tissue from a tissue box. I originally measured it and I was going to fill the whole thing up, but I was thinking it was just going to be too difficult to stuff it all in. So I opted to use the little piece just for the video. And with that, this project is complete. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time and I thought it turned out really cute. If you liked the video, give me that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. That's going to be it for this one. See you in the next video. Bye!